Do you care about how something is made? Like your clothes, your furniture, do you know who made it? Have you ever met them? Probably not. Well, a few generations ago, that would have been pretty unusual. But with globalization and mass production, we are increasingly detached from the source. And in many cases, the craft that goes into creating it is becoming a dying art. I'm Stefanie Dekker, and welcome to the stream. We take digital trends and your online conversations and give them context.
Whatever we've created around us has somewhere started off with the use of our hands. Craftsmanship all over the world is becoming scarce and is being replaced by technology.
This is something that is very precious to you as an individual. And if craft in every form dies and everything becomes a machine, there isn't an expression of yourself and your ability and your gift.
Now, will machines replace our hands? From fashion to food to furniture, mass production has made things faster and cheaper than ever. But as convenience wins, something else is slowly disappearing. The people, skills, and traditions behind what used to be made with time and talent. So today we're asking, is globalization killing craftsmanship or just changing what survives? To discuss all of this, we'll be speaking with three different guests, each with a very different angle on the topic. First up, we have Professor Somesh Singh, a steering committee member at the World Crafts Council. Professor, thank you for coming on the show. How real is the reality of losing craftsmanship? We were talking there, creating things with our hands, that's being replaced by machines. And do you have an example of things that have already, so to speak, gone extinct?
It is a very real danger, because handmade we are eventually losing, and we will lose for sure if we are not able to preserve it in the right time. And you've asked for example. I'll give an example. There was something called camel belt braiding in Jaisalmer in Rajasthan, which used to be practiced long ago. Today, if you go and search even for a single artisan, you will not find one. It has become an extinct craft. So this is a real danger, actually, we are sitting on.
What does that mean when we lose craftsmanship, when we lose the generations? Because it has to do with culture, with traditions, right? With storytelling. And you said we're going to lose it for sure unless we do something about it, right? Can we do something about it in this fast-paced world we're living in?
Certainly. The most important point is that how do we really, look at crafts? Unfortunately, we always think it's a time-consuming product, and we must, shift to machine to make mass manufactured ones. But if you look at the crafts in real, they are about people in community. They are about sustainability. They are about using local resources. They're about, so many, stories to emotions that are being linked to these crafts. So in real way, it is sustainable. And sustainability means, the world is looking for a lot of sustainable solutions. So craft is one. Only point is we have not been able to really focus there.
Okay, interesting. Well, we talk about globalization, industrialization. Does that always mean progress, or is it more nuanced? Listen to this.
What happens to a country that stops making things by hand? In Craftland, historian James Fox explores how 19th century Britain industrialized so fast that craftsmen went from being ordinary to symbolic. In places like Sheffield, blacksmiths went from being neighbors to nostalgia in just one generation. And it's easy to think of that as progress. Certainly they thought so at the time. But something quieter was lost. It's not just that the work disappeared, but the knowledge that lived inside that work. And that goes beyond just technique. Craft isn't just the past. It's a memory of a place.
So how much are we to blame for this? The consumer. We want things fast. We can find pretty much anything online these days. We can just order it. We don't have to go, to the elderly man who sits in his shop somewhere that we're not in another country to find those original pieces. There is so much. For me personally, I would much prefer that kind of storytelling and those kinds of pieces that have history. But this is not where the world is going, is it?
Actually, it's not consumers' fault, because a lot of stories they are not even aware of. But thankfully, because of the digital explosion, because of social media, now the stories have started reaching to these people. And there has been a greater demand. If you look at, the global statistics, there is a huge increase in demand of handicrafts item. But actually, are the artisans really making for those? No, it's actually intermediary who are manufacturing and supplying. So consumers are demanding, but artisans are not getting the opportunity is the actual problem.
That's interesting because, they don't have the marketing tools, right? Often they don't have access to marketing themselves on social media. So where does the responsibility lie? How can we change this? You're talking about raising awareness. So people are doing that online, but we're not seeing, if we look at the facts, they are a dying craft, so much that you've got the UNESCO list of endangered craftsmanships. Your organization is fighting to try and save it. So there is a real problem, right?
There is a real problem. And one thing we have to remember, they are called artisans. There is a word art associated with them, which means they are really like an artist. And globally, if you look at, all successful artists, they have not marketed themselves. There are people who market them. Unfortunately, what happens in terms of craft sector, we say, oh, okay, you're making something. You also learn social media, you also learn marketing. Then in that case, their making abilities will go for a toss. So it's very important that people must be helping to market them rather than, asking them to learn everything and do everything themselves. That's not possible.
Okay, and just to end the conversation, I want to take your personal view on this. What does it mean for you if we lose these craftsmanships, things that are made by hand, things that have tradition and stories and heritage? What does it mean for us as a society?
It's a huge loss. I feel this is irreversible loss any society will see for themselves because it's the real identity of a nation, of people, of community, of, geography. So it is, if we are going to lose that, which means we have lost total identity and the world cannot be uniform. It will look so boring if it becomes uniform. So craft is the real break from that industrialization to still a lot of creative societies living all over the world. So it's very important that we must preserve them.
And that really does get to the core of the issue. Professor Somesh, thank you very much for joining us today on The Street. We are going to continue our discussion now with Fadi Kattan. He's a Franco-Palestinian chef who uses cooking to preserve culture and memory. Fadi, thank you very much for joining us here on the show. Food is emotional, isn't it? It has history, it invokes memories. Would you call it a craft?
Of course. Well, thank you for having me. Yes, it is a craft. It is one of the oldest crafts in humanity. Professor was earlier saying it starts with making things with our hands. We cook with our hands. We cook with our soul and heart. So it is a craft, definitely.
So I was going to say, because for me, if I look at like a grandmother cooking or an Italian nonna teaching you how to make pasta, or what's the difference between that and going to an excellent cookery school who's had the chefs taught by their grandparents, but you're the student? How would you look at that? It's the same?
For me, it's the same. For me, it's the same. It's this knowledge that's transmitted from generation to generation that has things that are added and that stays contemporary with the time. But we have to remember that there is that foundation which you can learn at home, you can learn in a book, you can learn in a school. It's a base. And I think it's very similar to a lot of other crafts, where if you're a jewelry maker, you learn how to work the precious stones and metal, but then you create yourself. And I think it's the same with food. You go to you learn how to make bread, but then you come up with your own bread, etc. And I think it's always, there's this like fine line with crafts, which is where do we preserve the tradition and where do we create? And are we not sometimes making it into a rigid dogma by trying to preserve it? Or do
Interesting.
we build on that?
It could evolve, especially when it comes to cooking. I have a clip I want to play to you because it raises the question how important the ingredients and the food and the connection to the land are. Now, I literally remembered this moment a few hours before the show, and I want to play it. I did a story on Jerusalem's kak just before Al Jazeera was closed down, Fadi. And as we finished our dawn shoot in the Old City, we were walking back, and I asked Mark, our cameraman, himself from Jerusalem, how he felt about kak. Watch this. Mark, what does kak mean for people who don't know what kak is?
What does kak mean for me?
Yes.
Kak mean for me Jerusalem.
Which means?
This is the symbol of Jerusalem.
And the bakery we just went to now, this is the best one?
This is the best bakery. It's all 300 years. So it's the best bakery.
And how, for people who've never tasted kak, because kak, you have it all over the Middle East, no? What is special about the Holy City's kak?
We don't have this kak in the Middle East. And we don't have this kak in all Palestine. This kak only in Jerusalem. This is the identity of Jerusalem, this kak. And it won't be a kak outside the old city walls.
Why?
Because it can't be.
Because it can't be. He says even in Bethlehem where you are, Fadi, kak cannot be the same. Do you agree?
Hey, Stefanie, you're trying to start a Bethlehem, Jerusalem.
No,
dynamic
definitely
right
not. But it's emotion, right? Does it get you emotional?
I was smiling hearing Mark's words because, yes, it is kak and utz. It is like, even in Bethlehem, when you buy the kak, we call
I've had
it
great
the Jerusalem kak.
in Bethlehem, by the way. Yeah.
But I went to school in Jerusalem, and I would, it was before the segregation wall and before all of this madness, and I would walk down to Al Musrala and have kak from Al Musrala, which is just outside the old city walls. And I was smiling because there's always been this like rivalry between the two artisans, the two crafts of the ones making the kak at the bakery you went to inside the old city walls, and then there's two of them outside the city walls, and who does better kak? That is like the crux of what craft and food is people are proud of what they're doing, and then their customers are proud of what they're doing. Because hearing Mark speak, I'm sure his grandparents and his great-grandparents went to that bakery. They didn't go to the other one, they went to that one. And that's where longevity of food and the knowledge of food is preserved.
That's the thing, isn't it? It is so emotional. And I think with machines these days taking over so much of what we do with our hands, particularly in cooking, you're a chef. I know you talk a lot about, preserving heritage. Of course, also for Palestine, there's a whole other layer involved to that. But do you think that there is a very real danger these days? I mean, okay, give me your take on the viral recipes on Instagram. I mean, I watch them and I will try. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks good. But it's quick, it's fast, and it's just there, and it's a trend. How do you see that?
No, I think there's a threat, definitely, by globalizing food production. It is a disaster. But it's not so much a disaster in the sense of feeling the nostalgia of knowledge, because I think that we are preserving somehow still as human beings. I think it's more of a disaster in terms of the impact it has on how we eat and our relation to the people who make the food. Now, Instagram recipes, 5-minute recipes, whatever you want. I have nothing against this. What I do have a problem with is when in those recipes, all of a sudden people are using modified produce that have no sense, like, processed cheeses that are no more cheese, where, making a cheese is not very complicated. It's milk, rennet, and brine, and you're making a fantastic Nabulsi cheese. There are things that I think we can all do in our homes. And I'm not saying everybody has the time to do cheese, but I'm saying there are crafts that we can preserve in that making food, even within 5-minute recipes. It's how we pick the food. It's when we pick it. Are we staying seasonal? And the danger with globalization is there's no more seasons, and you get a tomato that looks exactly like the other one you're going to get all year round, wherever you are in the world, and it doesn't taste of a tomato.
I wanted to jump in because that's the beauty of it. I remember growing up going to a particular butcher. Even now, when I go home to see my parents where they live, we know where the best bread is. I know where to go for bread. I know where to go for fruit and vegetables. It's not in a big chain supermarket. There is still the little old lady or the best cherries in summer. They're seasonal. But we're losing this, aren't we? Because now, as you say, everything is available pretty much everywhere.
But there's a danger of also trying to preserve it, because what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years is the disappearance in certain countries of those small farmers, small shops. But then quite recently, in the last 10, 15 years, a resurgence of farmers markets, organic, bio, what have you, but that are at a price point that is not available for everyone. And that's the other side of the story. In Palestine and in a lot of other places, you can still walk down the old city of Jerusalem and buy cake from that fantastic baker at a very affordable price. I can walk down to the souk in Bethlehem and buy foraged herbs at a price that's affordable. And I think that's what we all should be working towards, is not making the artisan, organic, sustainable produce an exception, but actually making it the norm.
But there's
as you were mentioning with your parents, where they still know where they're going to buy these produce in those shops where they live.
Fadi, it's always fascinating and great to talk to you. That's all we have time for. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank you.
And joining us now here in the Stream studio is Sabah Arbilli, an Iraqi artist who works with painting and calligraphy, drawing on traditional techniques and cultural symbolism. Thank you so much for being here today with us. When it comes to your art, where do you draw your inspiration from? This is a show about, the dying art of craftsmanship. You use calligraphy a lot. Were you taught as a child? What is your link to it?
Well, my medium that I use for my art is calligraphy. And going back 25 years ago when I started, in the beginning, in school, I just had good handwriting, and it starts from there, basically. Everybody was calling me Sabah Kattan, which means a calligrapher. And then, I went to the, town center in Iraq. By then, there was a book teaches you how to write calligraphy. So basically what you do is just mimic whatever the previous masters they have in their booklets, and you just mimicking without you understanding the concept behind it, without you understanding there is a geometrical form behind everything by then. And then bit by bit, I become more familiar, and it took me to the different level.
Is there an emotional connection to this? Is it just a way of expressing? Because I was reading calligraphy, of course, people used to use it to do so many things. And that is now with the printing press, this is disappearing. There is a resurgence in the way that people just want to learn, as you're saying, memorizing, using it as an anti-stress way. But is there a danger, do you feel, that these kinds of things are disappearing?
I don't think. I think it's, with the, technologies and everything out there, it is much easier to reach, wider audience. And it's much better if you think about it. Once upon a time, in order for somebody to learn calligraphy, you have to seek a knowledge to be able to learn calligraphy. Nowadays, there is lots of videos and, in social media posts, you can just learn from it. If you have any question, you can easily contact actual people, masters or, teachers to teach you how to, preserve the beauty of this art.
And so much of this can be done online, which is incredible. Now, we want to talk about also indigenous artists who are struggling a lot these days as they see their crafts and designs used by major brands with no credit to them, and often in a culturally appropriated way.
What happens when our indigenous artwork, our creativity gets taken? Because you bead, you paint, you sew, you create, and you've spent years learning from your friends, from your family, from your loved ones, putting your heart and soul into every stitch, every design, and then one day you see it, your exact pattern mass-produced on a cheap bag in some online store, selling for pennies on the dollar. And guess what? You didn't get anything. You didn't get any credit. You didn't get any paid, cash, nothing.
What is your reaction to that?
Well, I agree with him, but in the same time, this is just part of life. You know, once upon a time, calligraphers were in higher places. All they do, they were writing important letters and messages. And bit by bit, when the printer came along, but there is always there is a bigger market. There is always another thing for the artist to do. It is helping me, for example, as an artist, to be able to reach out there and in order for my art, if it's somebody cannot afford the original piece, but they can have a copy of it. But in the same time, art is no longer just for elite, ordinary people. They can have a piece of your artwork and put it in their own house, which is an appreciation for art in a way.
It's interesting because Chef Fadi, who we had on just before you, was talking about that, right? How much do you preserve and how much do you allow it to evolve? Is that a struggle? Because you're talking about, for you, it's okay to have things replicated, right? Because everyone has access to it.
Yes.
But when you talk about a craftsman who's doing things by hand, and now let's say what he does is being mass produced in China, the market is flooded and he's out of business. Like how do we reconcile that?
It is unfortunate, but this is the life we are right now. This is the reality we are living in, but we have to adopt. Okay, we have absolutely no any other option. We cannot create a time machine, go back, so we can be, what we're gonna do is we try to preserve it and we keep it as it is. Now, just like everything else become really easy, art comes with it. For example, once upon a time, people walking and then there is a car takes you somewhere, and then, there was no electricity, and there is electricity for us to be able to see our artwork day and night much better. And then all these, technologies that help us to create art in a much easier way, a much faster way. So I'm a big fan of whatever is happening. I know, a lot of people, they have, different ideas about it, but I'm a pro.
We have to evolve with the times. Tell me a little bit about the art you have. How do you educate through your art?
The nature of my art, we can call it a conceptual calligraphy. It's not just ordinary calligraphy, because once upon a time, calligraphy, it was just, you give me a text, I rewrite it for you in a beautiful way, in a creative way. Nowadays, we have to have a message behind our art. Any piece that you do, it is just has to have a thoughtful, conceptual meaning that dragging people into the artwork and becomes part of them. So. Some pieces, I try to translate. For example, if somebody gives me a text, I'm not going to just rewrite it in a nice way. In order, I go deep into the meaning, and from the meaning try to extract a couple of words, and that words try to highlight it in order for audience to appreciate it. But mainly, I have to appreciate it first for them to be able to appreciate it.
So what is your message in the fingerprint, for example?
Oh, fingerprint, For example, the art of calligraphy evolved, or it started with with the religions of Islam. Yeah. So based on this, any Quranic verses that we see, there is a meaning behind it. So the fingerprint in particular, there is a verse in Quran. It says, we're gonna recreate, in the end of the days, we're gonna recreate your fingerprint. So I said, in order for me to rewrite this text, I have to just the verse called or the artwork called the echo of the verse. So the same text, I rewrite everything in order to create a fingerprint. Because as we know, a fingerprint is a very unique. Each one of us has a completely different way. So I try to make it in a way people, as soon as looking at the artwork, they realize there is a hidden message behind it. And once they get closer, they understand fully, and it sticks in their head.
That's about making people talk and think, right? And it's an interesting point you make there, that we have to evolve with the times. I want to ask you, where do you see us going? So it's a bit of off topic, but in a way it's not, right? Like the society is evolving, art is evolving, craftsmanship. We were talking about Fadi going to your local shop, getting, the local vegetables, the local butcher. Everything is changing so fast. Where are we going to be in 10 years' time?
Artistically?
Yes.
Well, we're going to somewhere absolutely amazing. Because,
do you use AI?
I use AI. I use anything that helps me to evolve my art. For example, once upon a time, when for me to make a 3D sculpture, I have to make a small model. Nowadays, I don't have to make a 3D model. Okay, I can just print 3D model, which is going to be much helpful for me to generate the larger size. So you cannot just make a big size sculpture without any calculations and things. All these calculations nowadays, you can do it with the computer, much easier. So, you know, in terms of risk, in terms of durability, everything is calculated, which is helping us to use our time in a much better way as an artist, which is very important because life is really short for an artist.
And you are embracing the change.
Big time.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
To talk to us here at the stream. And thank you for watching. From me and the entire stream team, I will see you soon.